Yes, mates, how's it going? My name's Lee. So today we'll discuss a few transfer options using a tier pyramid to rank a few players from S tier down to C tier. This will help to evaluate and prioritise potential players, not just for this week, but for future weeks as well. If you enjoy FPL content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Just a little click down below. Anyway, let's rock and roll. Right, mates, first up, and the one player making it into the S tier, so the S tier, priority numero uno. If you've got one transfer that you can make this week, it'll be this player, and that player is inevitably Ollie Watkins. 8.3 million forward for Aston Villa, 34.6% owned so far. It's only going to increase from now until the deadline. There are some midweek fixtures, so keep your eye on those before you do make any transfers, and that's some of the caveats for a lot of this. There are midweek fixtures, and that's the reason why it's been difficult to get some content out. With Spurs playing yesterday on the Monday, midweek fixtures for the European games. Spurs playing Friday, there's quite a short window to get some stuff out, but if you can make any transfer right now, with the information we've got right now, it would be Ollie Watkins. He's got 70 points so far, averaging 7.8 points per game, 5 goals, 8 assists. So some per 90 stats on the right hand side. He's got an XG of 0.45 per 90, an XA of 0.09. So he's got a total expected assist of 0.8. So he's massively overachieving his assist, but because he gets fouled a lot and they get penalties that get scored, he gets assists for those as well. So he gets a lot of FPL assists essentially. So that number's probably doesn't justify those penalty decisions as well, but he is massively overachieving his expected assists in terms of assists, but he's still getting quite a lot of shots away per game. He's got a nice run of games coming up. He's got Luton coming next, and he's a potential captaincy shout. If you haven't got him, I think he's going to be heavily owned. I think he might even hit 100% effective ownership. I think some people will take a gamble on him to captain him, but the only downside is that he's not on penalties. I don't think he's capable of getting regular hauls every single week, where some of the guys with penalties, the likes of Salah, Haaland, etc., do have that potential because they have that penalties to be able to rely upon, get those hat tricks, get those extra cheap goals, and they can kind of go from there. But Ollie Watkins, S tier transfer option this week. If you haven't got him, get him in. I've already got him. I brought him in last week for Darwin. I think he's essential, borderline essential this week. Next up, we've got the A tier. This is the next in line. This is the pretenders to the throne. Not quite making it as S tier, but still very, very great options. If you haven't got either of these, I think these could really hurt you this week. Somebody like Mo Salah, 12.7 million is obviously quite a lot of money, and you'd have to move some things around. If you're on wildcard this week, I think Salah is borderline essential, similar to Watkins. If you could put two players in the S tier, it would be Salah and Watkins. Salah 38.5% owned. His next few games are Forest, Luton and Brentford. I think he's just going to rip them apart. They've back from the international break. They're looking a lot better and more kind of solid as a team. And the thing is with Salah is that he didn't even play well, and he still got two returns. I was speaking to a friend, and he was saying, like, is that not a sign of a great player? And yeah, it kind of is, really, isn't it? Like, that's exactly what you want. Like, you don't want your players to play well every single week and not return. Like, you want them to be able to grind out goals, grind out results, grind out these returns, and that's what Mo Salah's doing right now. Even when he plays poorly, he's still getting a return. He's still getting a couple of returns, goal involvements, still heavily involved in the play. And he could have scored more as well. Like, he missed a couple of decent chances. Like, he could have had hat-trick an absolute monster haul, but they haven't got Mo Salah. I think he's a really great option. They've got good fixtures, and you can only avoid the king for so long. On to Matoma, 6.5 million midfielder for Brighton, 37.2% owned. He's gone under the radar a little bit. He seems to have kind of peaks and troughs in terms of his returns, and I'm probably being a little bit generous putting him in the A tier, but Brighton's fixtures are so good. I mean, like in the next few, they've got Fulham, Everton, Sheffield United, Forest. You know, those kind of fixtures are hard to ignore, but are these prime fixtures for Matoma to be rested? They've obviously got European games that they've not performed particularly well in. I think they'll try and push for that a little bit more, and Matoma might get some reduced minutes. I am slightly dubious of that, and it might kind of steer me away from it, but we all know how good Matoma can be and probably should be within those games. I think he can exploit them, particularly down his wing. His ownership is still sky high from the beginning of the season that people have just kind of brought him through. He seems to get a couple of returns every now and again, and I think he's blanked for the past 2 or 3, 4 games now, so I am expecting a return coming up in the next couple of games, and I think he's going to kind of I think he's gonna go off big for that price range as well. I think he's almost worth the gamble for 6.5 million. If you've got somebody like an Anthony Gordon, someone like me, and you've got that extra million in the bank, or you want to move some things around, going somewhere like a Matoma could be a really, really good option. Down to the B tier, this is the decent tier. This is the decent buy. They're not good, not bad, just steady eddies. They're just decent. First up, we've got Saka, 8.5 million midfielder playing for Arsenal. We all know what he can do. 47% owned. Is he on penalties? He's not on penalties. That's one of the big questions. He's been in great form this season, to be fair to him. Only reason is decent buy is like his old injury status and like the injury concerns. Like I know he played on the weekend, but is that going to keep catching up with him? Like these little injuries going to keep catching up and be little niggling injuries where he's going to miss odd games here and there. Like his games coming up, he's got Sheffield United this week. I could see him being rested for that. He's at Newcastle. He'll probably play in that one. Burnley the week after that, he could be rested in that. Brentford the week after that, he'll probably play in that, and then Wolves and Luton that he might get rested for. So it's kind of up and down. Don't really know where I stand with him. His ownership's that high where you probably still have to consider him. And the only way I could get someone like a Saka is taking Son down to Saka. Is that worth it? Not entirely sure. I mean, like Spurs have got Palace this week. I think that's a good fixture for them. And then after the Palace, they've got Chelsea, Wolves, and Villa. I think most fixtures are good attacking wise for Spurs, even when they're playing good teams, because of the way they play. They're quite progressive and quite attacking. I think most games and most teams to play against are good attacking fixtures for Spurs. So players like Son and Maddison, I still think are good holds long term. So Saka, the only way I can really get to him is taking out someone like Haaland down to somebody like an Alvarez, taking up an Anthony Gordon up to Saka, which I don't really mind that as an option, but that would be a -4 for me. I don't know if I want to take a -4 for that, but it is something I'm kind of playing around with. And I think if you haven't got Saka, I think you need to kind of think about a way how to get him back in. It's kind of like a mini Mo Salah. He'll just keep ticking along all throughout the season. He'll probably get 200 points again, and if you don't get him this week, you're probably looking at game week 12 up against Burnley, where they've got a nice one after that. At game week 15, they've got Luton. So I think you do need to keep Saka in your mind. You need to keep Arsenal players in your mind and think of a way to try and get them in. Brings me nicely on to Gabriel, 4.7 million defender, 13.1% owned. He looks like he's got his place back, and I don't want to kind of say categorically, yes, 100% he's got his place back, but he's 0.5 million cheaper than Saliba. I personally prefer Saliba. I think Saliba's the better defender. I think he's better on the bonus. I think he's a better goal threat. Everyone will say Gabriel's a better goal threat. I personally think Saliba is. But for that price range, for the 4.7 million, I just think it's really good value for that. And Arsenal are one of the better teams in the league. They're one of the better defenders in the league. They will keep clean sheets, like I said. Sheffield United, Burnley, Wolves, Luton, all in the next 6. They'll keep clean sheets in that, and exactly the same with Saka. Like, you need to think of a way of trying to get these Arsenal players in your team, and a relatively cheap way to get one of those in there is Gabriel. Maybe start thinking about how you can move that across to get someone like Gabriel in your team. On to Tsimikas, 4.5 million. He's gone up by 0.1. It was 4.4 before this game week. 3.5% owned. If you're on wildcard, this is just an easy pick for me. Liverpool fixtures, they've got really nice games over the next few. Forest this week, then Luton, Brentford, Man City. But after that, they have Fulham and Sheffield United. It looks like Robertson's going to be out long term. I don't think Tsimikas is 100% nailed to play left back. I think they do have other options that can come in and play there. But if they are going to play like a conventional left back, I think Tsimikas will get the nod. I don't think he's a great player, to be honest with you. Like he's a bit of a liability, both attacking and defensively as well. But like, he seems to be their backup left back, and I think he will get the nod. Like if they do want to play that conventional left back. Liverpool, good team. Like we all know what they can do. They don't attack as much down the fullback route, but to get into a top 6 defence for 4.5 million, I think is a great option. Similar to Gabriel, it's just a decent buy in terms of value, and I think his price will only increase. I can see him being 4.8, 4.9 in the next 2 or 3 weeks if he carries on playing and Liverpool keep performing, keep clean sheets. He will get the odd attacking return as well, because he does get quite high up. And I think if you're on wildcard, I would have both Gabriel and Tsimikas. Personal choice. If you are on wildcard, leave a comment down below and let me know if you are thinking of bringing in the likes of Gabriel and Tsimikas. Last but not least, we're on to the C tier. This isn't necessarily like players I want to avoid or players that are bad or anything like that. These are just players that you can maybe take a punt on them. So first up, we've got someone like an Evan Ferguson, Brighton. 6 million forward for Brighton. We all know what they can do. They still rack up a lot of XG. They're one of the best attacking teams in the league. 6.7% owned so far. I've already told you Brighton's fixtures, but they are Fulham, Everton, Sheffield United and Forest. If he's going to be number 9, which it looks like Welbeck might be out injured, if Ferguson's number 9, I think he will get a lot of returns and he'll be quite dangerous up there. But it's still quite punter. If you look at his returns this season, he's only returned in 2 games. One of them was a hat-trick, and one of them he got a single goal. So everything else has been a blank in every other game he's played. Like, he's blanked in those. So he might be a bit punty from that point of view. Like, he's not a reliable source of returns. But if you want to take a punt for 2 or 3, 4 weeks, those nice fixtures that Brighton have got and just play the fixtures, I don't think is a bad option, to be honest with you. I think you can do a lot worse at price range. You could go for someone like a Whistle who, although he scored on the weekend, I just don't really see as a viable FPL option for the foreseeable future. I mean, like Brentford fixtures, Chelsea this week, West Ham, difficult game, Liverpool, Arsenal, Luton, Brighton. They've only got one good game in the next 6, so someone like Whistle or Mbumo are players I'd be looking to avoid right now. On to Douglas Luiz, 5.5 million midfielder for Villa. On penalties, got a great home record this season. I think he scored in the last 6 or 7 consecutive home games. So if Villa have got a home game, stick Douglas Luiz in and just go for it. About 5% owned so far, so like he's still a decently owned player. But they do rely heavily on penalties for Douglas Luiz to get returns. He got a goal from open play last week, but I wouldn't rely on that too heavily. Like, he does sit quite deep. And if it's a team they can dominate, he can get forward, but he is primarily a defensive midfielder looking to dictate the play and look for those late runs into the box. But penalties are his main source of returns. He looks like he's on some set pieces as well, so he might get the odd assist as well. For 5.5 million, I don't think he's a bad option. I think he's decent. I mean, like, you've got the likes of Anthony Gordon and a couple others around that price range as well. Cole Palmer, which I'll touch in a moment. I don't think he's a bad option, but he's probably the 4th or 5th best Villa asset in my opinion. Like, you probably got Ollie Watkins number 1, Matty Cash 2, Moussa Diaby 3. You might even have some like a Pau Torres, or maybe even someone else that you want to take a punt on, and then probably Douglas Luiz is probably 4th, 5th, around that kind of range. So if you have got room for Douglas Luiz and you want to squeeze someone like that in, like if you don't want to go with someone like a Diaby who doesn't seem like he's performing that well, Luiz isn't a bad option, but because on penalties do kind of be warned, which is also the same with Cole Palmer. Because he is on pens, you've got to play him every single week because you don't know where you don't know where those penalties are coming from. You don't know where your returns are coming from. You have to play him every single week. A bit punty for Douglas Luiz in my opinion. It's not someone I'm probably going to look at, but I could see why people are looking at him. He's in good form. He's getting a lot of goals, and he's pretty low owned as well. So I can see why people are going there. Cole Palmer, 4.9 million midfielder, playing for Chelsea on penalties, 1.8% owned. Got a bit lucky with the penalty in my opinion. A bit of a dubious one. For this price range, I think he's great value, but I'd rather get Douglas Luiz for that 0.6 million more. Still on penalties, but he's a more reliable source avenue of returns. I'm not seeing enough from Cole Palmer. I mean, like, he only played like 20 games for City, and they paid 40 million for him. I don't think it's a great buy. I don't think it's a great purchase. I still need more convincing that is a good play. He kind of gives me Mata vibes sometimes. Kind of cutting in from the right wing on his left foot and kind of like doing what he does. Massive differential at 1.8% owned, but Chelsea's fixtures are just absolute dog dirt, mate. Like, I'll read out the next 2. Brentford this week, then Spurs, Man City, Newcastle, Brighton, Man United are the next 6. But same with Douglas Luiz. If you bring in Palmer, you've got to play him every single week because you don't know where those penalties are coming from. So you have to play Cole Palmer. So feel free, I bring him in, get him in, but do be warned, you've got to play him in every single one of those games, in my opinion. So I wouldn't play him in probably 90% of those. I'd probably play in Brentford this week. And that's probably about it. Not a viable option for me. He's not someone I'd be looking at if I was on wildcard. I'd try and move things around to make sure that I don't have Cole Palmer. But when Chelsea's fixtures do turn for the better, I think it's quite soon after this period, like around game week 16. I'm definitely looking at someone like Cole Palmer for 4.9 million. Massive budget enabler. I can move things around. I can massively improve the rest of my team. And for that kind of price range as well, it just allows me to do so much more with the rest of the team. Last but not least, we've got Darwin. I took him out last week, and although we got an assist last week, he got assist the week before. He's just too much of a headache. Like, he's just so punty. Like he's not worth it in my opinion. Like, feel free to go there if you really want to. He's just not worth it for me. I can't be bothered. Every time I come into a game week thinking, is he going to start? Is he going to be on the bench? Even when he starts, he only gets 60 minutes. When he comes off the bench, he gets 20, 30. He's currently valued at 7.4 million, and he's owned by 13% of the game so far. I think this will decrease ever so slightly, but Liverpool do have good fixtures. If you do want to take a punt on him, and I do think he's a big punt, I don't think he's first choice number 9. I don't think he's first choice left winger. I think that's probably someone like a Gakpo and a Jota or a Diaz on the left wing. I don't think he's number 1 for either of those slots, so I just don't really like him. Like he's more of a bit part player, massive headache. If you want to take a punt on him, like we all know how explosive he can be. We all know how chaotic he can create things for teams. He's just an absolute massive punt and not someone that I'm going to take any chances on at all. Feel free to do it. Leave a comment down below if you are thinking of bringing someone like Darwin into your team. But for me, no thanks, mate. Right, mates, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed. So today we made a tier pyramid for ranking transfers for game week 10. I've put Watkins at the top and I've put a few punts down at the bottom. Are you considering any of these players? Are you on wildcard this week? Are you considering anyone? Are you considering anyone that I've not thought about so far? Leave a comment down below and let me know who you are thinking of bringing in this week. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, all that usual jazz. Anyway, have a good day. Peace and love.